Arsenal's growing injury list during the course of this international break will leave shivers down the spines of both Mikel Arteta and his coaching staff, but by extension, all the Arsenal fans. Yes, the growing list of injuries on Arsenal's radar is becoming increasingly worrying, especially bearing in mind what their responsibilities are in regards to the pursuit of the Premier League title, as well as silverware in the UEFA Champions League, a competition that they've never won, not to mention their exploits in the FA Cup. Welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another episode on your favorite football updates channel. As I speak, news has just streamed in from Fabrizio Romano that Arsenal's left back, Piero Hincapie, will be leaving the Ecuadorian camp to return to Arsenal due to fears of an injury, and he will be assessed. Fabrizio Romano says, and I quote, following medical tests, Piero Hincapie leaves Ecuador camp and returns to London with immediate effect. Arsenal defender will be assessed by Arsenal staff this coming week. Now, when he says following medical tests, that is the concerning statement for me, because up until this stage, we had already learned previously or the day prior or on Saturday that two extra Arsenal players had left the England camp, in addition to Noni Madueke, who suffered an injury during their 1-1 draw against Uruguay due to fears of injury or fitness or to be assessed. Now, this is very, very worrying. And the reason as to why it is worrying is because in addition to Piero Hincapie, who is returning to London after medical tests to be further assessed by the Arsenal medical staff, is because he just adds to the pile of already a long list of injuries that Arsenal have had on their radar. Now, here's perspective. Prior to the international break, already Arsenal had injuries to midfielder Mikel Merino, captain Martin Odegaard, Ebeleche Eze, who suffered a calf injury in their 2-0 victory against Bayer Leverkusen in the UEFA Champions League, Jurriën Timber, who had gone off at halftime in their 2-0 victory against Everton. So all those were players that were injured. Now, when squads were summoned for the international break, you had another cohort of Arsenal players opt out of their respective national teams due to injury concerns. In the aftermath of the 2-0 defeat against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup final, Gabriel Magalhaes reported a pain in his knee. Therefore, he opted out of the Brazil national team squad. William Saliba opted out of the French national team squad due to injury, while Leandro Trossard equally opted out of the Belgium squad for the international break. Now, you already had that whole list of injuries. And now, in addition, while England were playing against Uruguay, Noni Madueke appeared to suffer an injury to his left knee, so much so to the extent that he had to be strapped, or he had to have his knee strapped prior to leaving Wembley Stadium. Now, again, like I said, on Saturday night or Saturday evening, Fabrizio Romano reported that Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka had left the England camp for medical assessment. Now, you do not go, and this is not the kind of medical assessment where you go to hospital for a general checkup just to be sure you're fully fit, everything checks out, your blood pressure is at the right pace, and you have nothing to worry about. Usually, when these medical tests are being done on players, it's for precautionary reasons. Why? Because the players have felt something. They've felt an ego, they've felt a tight muscle, they've felt a bit of uneasiness in a particular spot. It could be a knee, it could be a calf, it could be the hamstring, it could be an ankle, whatever it is. So they did leave the England camp to return to the Sober Royalty Center where Arsenal train at London Colony for medical assessment. Now, that's in addition to Noni Madueke, who had suffered that injury. But they were not the only players that left the England camp, because besides those Arsenal players, you had John Stones of Manchester City leave the England camp. You had Fikayo Tomori of AC Milan. You had Aaron Ramsdale of Newcastle. You had Adam Wharton of Crystal Palace, as well as Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Leeds United, leaving the England camp to return back to their clubs for medical assessments. So before you draw to any conclusions or in conspiracy or as theory that maybe it's Arsenal pulling out their players as precaution or as anything, or it's a strategy to keep their players fresh, remember, it's not only Arsenal that have had players leave their camps immediately or effective immediately before the end of the international break for injury concerns or to be further assessed. Now, the beauty of for this, particularly with the England national team, is that the manager or the head coach in Thomas Tuchel had in the 35 player man squad that he did summon, he had already indicated that some of his players were to sit out the Uruguay game because for load game management. And among those players were Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, Anthony Gordon, Eberechi Eze were supposed to sit it out. I think the likes of Morgan Rogers, Ezri Konsa, all these players that have played lots and lots of minutes thus far this season. And given what their clubs still have as responsibilities at the business end of the season, when you talk about a team like Manchester City, after the international break, they have a quarter-final game against Liverpool in the FA Cup. Arsenal have to play Southampton, after which then Arsenal will go and play a UEFA Champions League game against Sporting CP before playing Bournemouth at the weekend, while Manchester City will not have a midweek game and then will play away to Chelsea. And then in the aftermath of those games, then Arsenal will host a Sporting CP, and then before making the trip to the Etihad Stadium. And the reason as why this is very, very concerning for the Arsenal is that list of injured players has now grown. So you already had 8 players confirmed with injury. And the kinds of players that we're talking about are all starters or would all be starters if they were fully fit and available. Okay, at least majority of them. So you have Martin Odegaard, Eberechi Eze, Yuan Timber, Leandro Trossard, William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, Mikel Merino, and Noni Madueke. Now, in addition to that, you're having Piero Hincapie join the crew, while Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka have left the England camp to return to the club. Now, if you're an Arsenal fan, or even if you're not an Arsenal fan, but just a football enthusiast, even if you're a fan from the rival club, tell me that wouldn't be concerning if you had majority of your starters have injury concerns towards the business end of the season. Even if you're a Manchester United fan for whom your team is pursuing a third place finish in the Premier League, possibly to qualify for Champions League football. Even if you're a Liverpool fan whose side is pursuing a top 4 finish, or a Chelsea side, even if you're Manchester City, this would be really, really of concern to you. It will be very, very concerning to you. So that, I think, will be leaving shivers down the spines of Mikel Arteta and the Arsenal fans, especially bearing in mind that they know for a fact that they have conceded a Premier League title before, or even other pieces of silverware due to injuries. For those of you that care to remember, back in 2022-2023, at the business end of the season, they lost William Saliba and Takehiro Tomiyasu when they were being eliminated from the UEFA Europa League at the expense of Sporting CP, which eventually cost them a Premier League title. They went on to have draws against West Ham. They had a draw, I think, against Southampton at home, and results just did not go their way. And then they went away to Manchester City and got obliterated. Why? They did not have some of their prime players who had carried them all throughout the season. They went to the Etihad Stadium with Rob Holding, no offense to him, and he got obliterated by Brad Erling Haaland, despite him scoring, the only consolation that Arsenal got in that game. So already, Arsenal fans are living in constant skepticism, perhaps fear, but one based on historical context and this whole narrative that is being driven around that they're going to bottle it. One, if we do return from the international break, you play your Southampton game regardless of the result. If they go, let's say, to Portugal and they do not get a desired result, that will all be beside the point. But the critical game that everybody will be having their eyes on is that home game against FC Bournemouth. Should they drop any points whatsoever during that game, whether it's a draw or a loss, tell me that's not going to shift the narrative. Or they've started crumbling. They lost to Manchester City. That dented their confidence, and look at their performances. Therefore, Manchester City will be waiting to play on Sunday against Chelsea. So that means if Arsenal drop points, because if Arsenal were to win that game against FC Bournemouth, they will go 12 points clear of Manchester City, with Man City waiting to play Chelsea on Sunday. Now, should Arsenal drop any points whatsoever, and then Manchester City were to beat up against Chelsea, you see where we are heading with the mathematics of that? With Man City already having another game in hand, released the subsequent weekend, they'll be waiting at the Etihad Stadium to play Arsenal. Tell me that wouldn't, make you concerned. Tell me that wouldn't send scares down your spine. Well, it's not to say that is going to be the case, and it is not to say that none of these players are going to return just in time to feature in that game. Like I said, the little bit of relief for Mikel Arteta would be that the first game after the international break is against Southampton. Not because Southampton is an easy game, but it's a game in which you can sacrifice without risking your prime players. It's the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. If they do get eliminated, it's not what they would have wanted. But they would think, okay, we are out of the FA Cup, so be it. Let's go fight at the UEFA Champions League front and subsequently to the Premier League, up front. Not that they would want to lose the Southampton game. Nonetheless, also bear in mind that it is already you can presume it or pre-qualified that they are going to play with their second team when it comes to that Southampton game. You expect maybe to see a Arrizabalaga in goal, a Christian Mosquera should he return fully fit, and a Maz Luis Kelly in that game, a Christian Norgard, that kind of thing. So maybe a Max Doman to start in that kind of game, a Gabriel Jesus starting in that kind of game, So, but what Arsenal are going through at the moment, as is the case with other clubs, because Barcelona lost Rafinha to a hamstring injury while he featured for Brazil in their 2-1 loss against France in an international friendly. So, what Arsenal are going through, other clubs are going through, but maybe not to the same extent. I've already said this. The biggest worry for these clubs and their fans and their head coaches or managers about the international breaks is the fear of their players returning with injuries. You remember last season when Martin Odegaard was not the captain or the player that he had been the 2 seasons prior. Why? Because he suffered an ankle injury during the international break, came back, spent 2 months on injury, and when he returned, he was never the same player. It was not until the tail end of the season that he had started to pick up the momentum. Perhaps a little too late in Arsenal's pursuit to push Liverpool for glory, as Liverpool ran away with the Premier League title. So those kinds of fears are what stay back with the respective clubs and their fans. So do let me know what you think, whether it's just precautionary or you think Arsenal can still survive on with all these injuries if they are confirmed to be injuries. Like I said, the other players are waiting assessment. Particularly for Noni Madueke, we are not sure this extent of injury that he has. But if it's a ligament injury on his knee, if it's a grade 1, it will be 1 to 2 weeks. If it's a grade 2, it could be 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And if it's a grade 3, it could be 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And it's beyond that, it could be 8 weeks or more. At this stage of the season, you wouldn't want to lose a player, not even for a week. So anything beyond a week is very, very concerning. So do let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section about whether Arsenal fans and the management in Mikel Arteta and his coaching staff should be really, really worried with the extent of injuries that seem to be coming their way. Do you think Arsenal can survive and end this season with a piece of silverware? Because these injuries threaten that status. They threaten that hope. They threaten that faith. They threaten that conviction that they could end this season with a piece of silverware. Your thoughts down in the comment section. Thank you.